Welcome to our weird world, where each week we gather around the bonfire to uncover the world's most fascinating legends and mysteries. Tonight, we bring you the story of California's Dark Watchers. So sit back, relax, and let the flames of our virtual campfire keep the shadows at bay. The Santa Lucia Mountains of California rise sharply from the coast, their peaks often shrouded in a mist that rolls in from the ocean like curtain hiding secrets. For as long as anyone can remember, locals have whispered tales of the Dark Watchers, silent, shadowy figures who haunt the ridges and cliffs. Shadows are often found at dusk as the light fades and the boundary between day and night blurs. And so, as the legend goes, anyone who sees them must avert their eyes and continue walking, for the Dark Watchers do not take kindly to being watched themselves. The Chumash people were amongst the first inhabitants of the region, living in harmony with the mountain and the coast. To them, the Dark Watchers were more than just shadows. They are beings of the spirit world called Nunu, which loosely translates to the ones who watch. According to their lore, the creatures were neither good nor evil, but powerful, like forces of nature. They were guardians of the mountain's soul, bound to the land by an ancient covenant. The tribes would often leave offerings on the trails, shells, carved stones, and herbs, to appease these spirits and ensure safe passage. They believed that the beings were the spirits who roamed the mountains, guardians of secrets far older than human memory. One of the tribe's oldest stories, often told around campfires, recounts the tale of Oho, a young warrior. One evening, Oho, while tracking deer, found himself lost in the dense forest. As dusk fell, he saw a figure high on a cliff, tall and robed in shadows, silently watching him. Despite his fear, Oho called out, seeking guidance. The figure simply lifted an arm, pointing toward the path that led him home. But upon returning to the village, his elders warned him never to call upon the Dark Watchers again, for to be seen by them more than once was to risk losing one's spirit to the mountain. When the Spanish settlers arrived in the 1700s, they brought tales of their own spirits and demons, but even these hardened explorers felt something otherworldly about the Santa Lucia range. Missionaries, soldiers, and settlers alike reported eerie encounters with what they called the vigilantes oscuros, or dark sentinels. Father Miguel Alvarez, a Franciscan priest stationed at Mission San Antonio, wrote in his diary of seeing men of shadows upon the ridges at dawn and dusk. Though he was a man of faith, his writings suggest a fear that the Watchers were something older, perhaps spirits that even God had no control over. One notable account from the early 1800s tells of a group of Spanish soldiers who ventured too deep into the mountains. They were sent to search for a lost scout who had failed to return from patrol. As they climbed higher into the mist-laden cliffs, one soldier reportedly saw the scout standing with a tall, cloaked figure beside him. Thinking it was a friendly meeting, he called out, only to see the figure vanish into thin air. A day later, the scout's body was found at the foot of a cliff, his face frozen in a look of terror. The soldiers refused to go further, and soon after, the Spanish abandoned their outposts in the Santa Lucia foothills. In the 1930s, the legend of the Dark Watchers found its way into California's literary culture. Robinson Jeffers, a renowned poet who lived among the Big Sur coast, often incorporated the mysteries of the land into his work. Jeffers and his wife Una both claimed to have seen the Dark Watchers during their walks in the hills near their stone home, Tor House. Jeffers wrote of the Watchers as ancient guardians, and his poetry captured both the allure and the dread that these figures inspired. In a rare personal account, Una confided in a friend about a peculiar encounter. She had spotted a Watcher just as twilight was descending over the hills. The figure, dark against the sky, seemed to turn its face toward her, and for a moment Una felt as though she had glimpsed an ancient sadness, a loneliness that spanned centuries. The Watcher lifted an arm as to acknowledge her, then faded into the mist as swiftly as it had appeared. After this encounter, Una took to leaving small tokens, a flower, a stone, along the trail. For them, she would whisper. In the 1960s, the legend of the Dark Watchers took on a darker hue. Reports of missing persons in the Santa Lucia Mountains surged, and more than a few people began to speculate that the Dark Watchers were somehow involved. Some hikers claimed that just before disappearing, they had been called by the figures, an inexplicable urge to wander farther into the wilderness. Marcus Soto, a young park ranger in 1976, is among the most well-known cases. Soto was an experienced outdoorsman, familiar with every trail and ridge in the Santa Lucia range. One evening, while patrolling alone, he reported seeing a group of figures standing on a distant ridge. They were silent and unmoving, but something compelled him to walk toward them. When he did not return, a search party was sent out, but there was no trace of him, only his flashlight and hat left at the base of a cliff. A week later, Eli Martinez, a fellow ranger, was hiking the same trail. He swore he saw Marcus standing with a tall figure in a dark cloak by his side, but when he called out, both figures vanished into the mist. To this day, locals believe that Marcus became a part of the Watchers, his spirit forever bound to the mountains. In recent years, sightings of the Dark Watchers have continued, though fewer people venture as far into the mountains as they once did. The presence of the Watchers remains enigmatic, part memory, part warning. Some speculate they are merely shadows cast by rock formations in fading light, or optical illusions caused by the mountain's unique atmospheric conditions, but those who have seen them insist otherwise. One story, often recounted by campers and hikers, tells of a couple who set out to explore the mountains one autumn evening. They had heard of the Dark Watchers and were curious but skeptical. As the sun began to set, they spotted a figure on the ridge, draped in shadow as still as stone. But as they watched, a strange sense of calm washed over them. The figure seemed to be watching the sunset as though waiting for something. They left an offering of wildflowers, hoping to earn the Watchers' good graces, and hiked back to their camp. That night, they dreamt of the Watchers, who stood by the edge of a cliff, gazing into the distance. In the dream, they followed it and discovered an ancient cave filled with drawings, images of the mountain, rivers, and stars. When they awoke, they both recalled the dream in vivid detail. They returned to the spot the next day but found no cave. Only the mountains stretched before them, untouched and unchanged. Those who study the lore of the Dark Watchers believe that the figures guard something hidden within the Santa Lucia range, whether it's an ancient relic, a portal to another world, or the very essence of the mountain's soul. No one truly knows, yet the Watchers persist, silent and mysterious. Locals say the Dark Watchers are protectors, not of people, but of the land itself. The mountain is sacred to them, a place where the spirits of the ancient world still linger. Perhaps the Watchers are an echo of the past, or perhaps they are timeless beings watching over the land as it changes around them. To this day, hikers are warned to respect the Watchers, to never look directly at them for too long, and to always leave an offering lest they awaken something that should not be disturbed. The legend of the Dark Watchers remains one of California's most enduring mysteries. With each sighting, the story deepens and the boundary between legend and reality grows thinner. The Santa Lucia Mountains stand as a monument to the ancient world, watched over by shadows older than time, shadows that remain long after the sun is set and the last light fades. Those who venture into the mountains carry the weight of the Watcher's gaze, forever tied to the land where the shadows linger, silent and unmoving as they have for centuries. As we leave you here, remember, the legends of our weird world are boundless. If you've enjoyed the stories, please share, like, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Your support enables us to keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay curious, but don't interrupt the sentinels standing watch lest you be forced to join them.